Welcome everyone to this webinar about sustainable retail spaces. My name is Marloes Reining and I will be your facilitator for today. So who are we? The Regenerative Collaborative of South Africa. The Regenerative Collaborative is a non-profit organization focused on making our built environment more regenerative. We support strategies and methods that bring regenerative design and construction to life. Together, we aim to inspire, educate, raise awareness, and tailor regenerative approaches to fit the South African context. We love showcasing local projects, people, and companies that share our goal of creating a regenerative future. It is a non-profit organization and it's 100% run by volunteers. If you want to help us, please like and subscribe our YouTube channel. The more subscribers we have, the more sponsorship we can ask for. So please follow us on YouTube. Also, all our previous webinars are listed there. So if you've missed something or you want to refer one webinar to a colleague, that's where you can find them. And then again, graciously, the South African Institute of Drafting again has waived their fees for the validation for the CPD point. So we are very grateful for them. They are a key player in advancing the drafting profession in South Africa. They offer certification programs to ensure draftsmen have the skills and knowledge needed to excel. They provided loads of resources like industry news, tech updates, and learning opportunities through workshops and seminars, helping members to stay sharp and up to date. Very grateful that they are sponsoring again one of our webinars. But having said that, we do need some other sponsors as well. So if you know anyone, let us know and we will follow up with a phone call. Other ways to follow us are LinkedIn, Eventbrite, our registration platform, and our YouTube channel. So yeah, if you want to join the collaborative, we currently are calling for volunteers. We desperately need some help on the admin side and the social media side. So if you guys have it's not even an hour a week available and you want to join the group of volunteers, please put down your email address in the chat box and we'll be in touch with you, or just email me directly or any of the other committee members. But to the order of the day, we are talking about sustainable retail spaces. Okay, so we have two very exciting speakers for today. First up is going to be Aram Lello, and he's got over 18 years of experience in the architecture field. He's very driven by a deep passion for design. He worked for DHK for over 12 years, but is currently a senior associate at Clark Hopkins Clark Architects based in Sydney. He has extensive experience in managing project teams, overseeing architectural design delivery, and coordinating consultants with a strong emphasis on interdisciplinary design. He's worked on a variety of projects, including office buildings, mixed-use development, hotels, multi-unit residentials, and urban design projects. But today we're talking about retail spaces and mall spaces. And then I'm going to introduce a second speaker as well before I'm going to hand over to Aram. We've got Brian Unsted, and he's got a background in finance and marketing topped with an MBA. And he currently leads the sustainability efforts at the entire Liberty 2 Degrees building portfolio, including Sandton City and Eastgate. He has successfully achieved existing building performance Green Star rating across the entire retail portfolio, with Sandton City earning a 6-star Green Star rating in 2021, which is definitely a very good achievement. Brian handles the environmental component of ESG reporting and oversees the net zero waste certification process, as well as the development of net zero water and net zero carbon strategies for the entire retail portfolio. In his asset management role, he manages properties like Nelson Mandela Square in Sandton and Liberty Promenade in Cape Town. And I also found out today that he is the co-author of the book Sandton Spaces, which is a really great book if you want to know fun things to do in Sandton. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Aram, and he's going to give a presentation on how we can reinvent or rethink our retail spaces. And I've seen flashes of it, and I can tell you it's going to be interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, I think as you mentioned, it's probably not going to focus exclusively on sustainability. I will touch in and out of that topic through the presentation, but I think I'm probably coming more from the angle of my experience, which obviously has been focusing more on the design side, and in particular in the last few years, where I've been working from Sydney, but mostly. I developed a number of design strategy principle, which became quite useful in the early stages of most of our retail projects. And we're not trying to rethink or reinvent the bones of a shopping mall or the kind of more the operational side, but really there are strategies that are made or designed to shake a bit the status quo and the kind of the standard way of thinking or approaching shopping malls. So I hope that some of the information I will share today can be useful for most of us in the meeting today, for the work you're doing with new shopping mall or with existing one. The title is what you see on the screen, and I also added a bit of a subtitle, which is a redemption story in the Remaking the Mall, which I'm not going to try to explain now. I hope that by the end of the presentation, it will become clear why I believe is a redemption story. I also want to share very, very briefly some information that I found that very interesting, very useful for anyone that operates and works in the shopping kind of a mall industry from design point of view, and I think it's very relevant in terms of where we are going now. It's interesting, I think, to know, and some of you might already know, but the shopping mall as we live today was invented or created around the 50s by the gentleman that you see on the screen on the top left, which was also another architect by the name of Victor Gruen, who really kind of developed the concept of the suburban indoor mall, which was anchored by department store and specialty shops. He left Austria, where he was born, back in the 50s, and really relocated in the States, where he put his kind of experience in the retail, architectural retail, to the service of the upcoming kind of expansion of the chaotic suburbia of America. And what he really was trying to do was to inject some form of life or social life into this area where I think we're really lacking opportunity, where people could actually, socialize, get together, and building a sense of community was really lacking, and which is what he called the third places. He had a grand vision really from the start. He really wanted to kind of replicate the experience of what he had lived in Europe, in his native city, which was Vienna. He wanted to create a space that wasn't only focused or dedicated to retail, but it was a mix of many other, attraction, from public arts, landscape, fountains, water features, and more. He really has this grand vision of the retail kind of center be part of a mixed-use kind of precinct, where really building with residential and medical center, offices, school, should have been part of that kind of a structure. His idea was very well received, and I would say very highly successful. I think just the downside of that is that his clients and some of the developers that kind of embrace his concept or copy his concept really simplify his vision and really probably focus their attention and mostly on the commercial side, on the retail side. And so, yes, malls became very much an attraction worldwide, not just in America, and expanded, until today, but fundamentally focusing primarily on retail. And so we went from a mall madness in time to a more recent mall sadness, if I can call it that way. So malls have become and have been for a long time an important part of the, if you want to call it, the urban fabric of our society. And in recent years, they've been going through a bumpy really road, and for a number of reasons. I mean, the one that I'm highlighting on the screen is probably the most obvious and the most evident, the arrival an expansion of e-commerce, COVID pandemic that we all experienced in recent year. And the third one is kind of an oversupply of actually more, which is, but it is almost like the results of almost the first two. The few numbers that I'm showing here, I'm not really a number person or data, but what I'm really trying to capture is to demonstrate that shopping mall, besides the fact they're going through a very hard time, and they will probably still going through in the year to come, I believe they are here to stay. Probably not on the form and shape that we have known for a long time, but nevertheless are a presence in our urban environment that we'll need to accept. And the one that will survive and prosper well are the one that will manage to adapt and reinvent themselves. And so through this kind of readaptation and morphing process that we experience we often sitting with our clients and kind of the wider design team, and we have in time kind of summarized a lot of the strategy and ideas that came out of the kind of brainstorming session and workshop that we have. And what I'm trying to do here today is really to summarize some of these strategies, which I think are highly valuable when we entrepreneur or when you start this kind of a journey of designing from scratch or adapting an existing shopping mall. And I will, kind of dive into each of this strategy into more detail. But at a high level, we kind of constantly always trying to support and suggest that third places, or like a mix, a tapestry of third places, public areas should be really considered when we're designing or reusing existing mall. This should be also mixed with the idea of a more mixed-use precinct. So mall shouldn't be identified as an isolated typology. Improve connectivity, where we especially can support pedestrian or cyclist form of transportation. Breakdown boundary, it's an interesting one, is where we're really focusing or suggesting that mall shouldn't be not an implosive, but more an explosive kind of a structure where we really connect with the surrounding and existing fabric, urban fabric. Design for experience is very vast. Again, strategy can encapsulate a lot of opportunity, but it is fundamentally touching the idea of creating memorable experience for the visitors and customers. And sustainability, which is something that obviously you, Malush, and the rest of Solid Green team knows very well. It's a very vast portfolio, but it's also a kind of an opportunity for shopping mall, which are a very large kind of a form of building that could become a very important and active opportunity to improve our response to our planet. So diving into some of them, I've spoke briefly about the third places, which was one of the initial steps where Vernon wanted to kind of improve the quality of shopping mall. And this can be really see in different form and shapes. It's not like one formula fits all spaces. And it's a simple idea of considering when we are planning new shopping center or revamping existing one, to really consider places that are focused around the people experience, not necessarily just the transaction and retail experience. It's really where people can socialize, get together, be able to connect with friends and family. And this should be happening irrespectively of the desire or not to actually experience the mall. This is images and projects that I've been involved or I've managed to visit, especially around Australia or some other parts of the world. Really, the key things of this is that it doesn't need to be always a large space. It could be quite intimate and unique. The project on the top right particularly is one I'm involved at the moment, which is a large shopping center, about 120,000 square meter on the northwest of Sydney. And it's interesting, in the process of revamping it, we're actually not adding any retail. There is no need for the feasibility and for the purpose of this particular project to add more retail. We're adding an office, we're adding a hotel. But also what we're doing, we're converting almost a third of the indoor shopping of the mall space into outdoor space, which is this is one of the many images that we use on the recent presentation with our clients, where this is actually, it's probably difficult to imagine, but this currently is all an indoor space, and we have actually demolished part of it and converting into very attractive outdoor spaces, for food and beverage area, piazza area, water feature, and so on, and lots of biophilic and landscape opportunity. So it's important to consider this spacing in a very also tactile manner. It needs to become something that really reaches the heart, if you want, of your public, and creates an emotional kind of strong connection with them. Another key point, which is also, I think, very important, is the idea to not think a shopping mall as a solo kind of a development, in isolation. Really, malls should start to become more the catalyst for a precinct that's put together residential building, schools, medical centers, and hotels, hospitality, and many others. I think there's opportunity to see the mall as that kind of a key opener for spaces that they are more than just retail. I've captured a couple of projects here, which are, again, I've worked on or I'm working on. The one on the top right is very interesting. Again, the mall I was showing you earlier, which is the Castle Tower northwest of Sydney, where we actually breaking the boundary of the perimeter of the mall and adding, a hotel on the left side and an office building on the right, and really start to become this form of gateway situation into the precinct. But also, I acknowledge some of the great work and time that I spent in South Africa. And I just add a little picture there, of Oxford Park, which probably some of you know well, in Rosebank, where I think it's a very interesting and refined example in the South Africa kind of environment of how a mixed-use precinct can work well and become, as I said, this form of catalyst for a rejuvenation of existing part of our urban environment. Yeah, I think the idea also of bringing and focusing the attention on a mixed-use precinct it's also work from a sustainability point of view. It avoid people having long commutes and really offer lowering their carbon footprint of our projects. And this is, again, is just that Castle Tower kind of a project we're showing you earlier, just a wider images with the hotel on the right and the office building on the city on the left side. Improving connectivity, and I think that's I know can be seen as a quite a challenge in South Africa, for a number of reasons, but I think it's still very valid to put on the table when we are rethinking or preparing, a design strategy for more, be able to have strong connection with public transportation and pedestrian or cyclist routes. It's very important. Car, it's obviously remain one of the key way of moving, especially in South Africa, but I think trying to consider ways of how we can mitigate or reduce a car-centric environment, I think is important. And it's been very interesting for me in obviously having operating for 15 years in South Africa now, the last 5 in Australia, is to see how here often local council or state agency often get involved in some of the project, and we kind of workshop opportunity where we can actually blend new station, bus terminal, or metro station that can actually be combined within the shopping mall kind of a footprint. And this is just some example that I visit through my traveling. The picture probably doesn't say much, but I hope by sharing some of the name of the project, I mean, this is a relatively new shopping mall in Bratislava, which is Slovakia, which it's about 70,000 square meter of retail plus 30,000 of commercial space, and they have a fantastic over 3,000 square meter of green roof. But what's interesting, they have actually a terminal, bus terminal, that is located right under the shopping mall, which generates something about 20 to 25,000 people moving every day. And, obviously having this opportunity to connect quite easily to the retail space and taking advantage of the facility that are located on the roof, and obviously avoiding to drive their own car. I find it very interesting and fun for me, and for anyone that loves cycling, is this shopping mall in Singapore, which is called Funan, which was designed by Woods Bagot, which is quite an interesting architectural firm, where you literally can ride your bicycle within the mall across all the 6 levels of the mall. Obviously you need to respect the speed limit, but again, you literally can get inside with the bike and reach the store or the cinema where you want to go. Breaking down boundaries, it's also a very important one. I think this is really trying to shake a bit and challenge actually the way that often shopping mall are designed, and I know sometimes is the outcome of a practical and functional reason why mall ends up to be often dark boxes or boxes that provide very little activation on the perimeter. But what I'm trying to suggest here, and what I'm trying to show is that we really need to try to think how we can actually breaking up the walls, the perimeter conditions of mall, and trying to engage more actively with the local and existing urban environment, with the local streets, and trying to really create a more seamless relationship between the mall space and then what is already around the mall area. So providing more transparency, permeability, for the mall towards the outside, and vice versa. So this is just some of the projects that again recently been involved with. This interesting. It's an existing mall where we actually introduced new skylights, connecting obviously to a top roof, public roof, but also we start creating more permeable option or opportunity across the floor, not only to harvest natural light all the way down to the lowest level, but also to create visual connection across the different floor. This is a recent sketch that I was working a few weeks back, where some of the picture on the bottom showing you some of the existing condition of this shopping center, and we are proposing some kind of a relatively simple but effective breaking down of walls that currently are completely blank and have very little response towards the existing environment. And I think being in a way transparent, it just provide a more effective kind of a design solution between the mall and the existing urban fabric. Design for experience, it's a fantastic kind of a strategy, and again, this could be a conversation on its own. I think we're living in a world now that is really pivoting around experience, some better than other, but the one obviously I'm trying to advise or suggest here is really all generally positive. It really much this links to one of the earlier strategies that I discussed about creating this kind of tapestry of third places. They go very much hand in hand here, is focusing around the people emotion and kind of the people experience. So making sure that you can have also a flexible environment where your mall and your common area can be reinvented for different events, being a market, being a concert, an outdoor cinema. And some of the more recent that I've discovered, and I haven't yet personally experienced, but I'm hoping to go soon back to Bangkok, is this one on the left, sorry, on the top right of the page, where some of the local actually shopping center has start connecting with art gallery and call it event spaces, where in this particular case a Biennale of Art was running, and they create almost like a satellite exhibition within the common area of the shopping mall. And this really create a formal bridge between the mall and another building, being institutional or a public building, and really give an opportunity for the customer to have a glimpse or an initial kind of introduction of something that's happening somewhere else. So mall becomes this kind of a window into a different world, and again, it's not just focusing exclusively around the retail aspect. creating public spaces were dedicated to public art. Again, those are the opportunity that we see often, and very advantages for shopping center, and to create like a 24/7 almost like lifestyle. This is something I see capture recently. The top one on the right, it's in France, in Paris, is a Le Bon Marché department store, where they basically created actually a full skate park indoor in the mall. And what I was experiencing just standing there and watch is that you can see, family coming obviously to the mall, but kids have their own agenda. Obviously, they are there only for their activity, meeting their friends, doing a bit of exercise, enjoying the skating, while the parents are having a bite or finishing their shopping. The one on the left also is the same one I showed you earlier with the bicycle, where you can ride inside of the mall. And that's again this Funan Mall in Singapore, where they have one of the tallest indoor climbing kind of activity. Again, those are all opportunity that often are not linked to shopping mall. It's things that you might find on a sport venue or entertainment venue, but I think mall becoming this kind of a canvas for much more than just, again, retail. So they're really focusing around spaces that need to be more humane, more immersive, more personalized and accessible. And I think it is also very important to consider that this activity are really much across all ages and people age. And then sustainability, I think, again, that's also something that can be discussed for hours. I think I'm not trying to capture here everything that could be done. We all know that's the building environment, represent, I think, about 40% of the CO2 emission, and we have the responsibility to do better. We're living in a time where thinking of, carbon neutral is not anymore enough. We need to really focus more about carbon zero. So really start from the start, considering initiative and strategy that really provide us that pathway to a carbon zero and a more sustainable design are fundamental. This is just some of the stuff that I've been fortunate enough to work with. On the top left is very interesting. We are developing this shopping mall with a naturally ventilated strategy for all common area. We are still under finalizing in the kind of the design, but the current modeling, demonstrate that probably energy saving up to 30 to 40% will be achievable across a full year analysis. That's also provide not only a saving, if you want, on energy, but also provide an improvement on the well-being of people by connected to natural light, natural air, and injecting a lot of kind of a biophilic elements within the mall space. And to a certain degree, by touching on that biophilic ideas, it's interesting. This is not one on my project, but I've been reading quite a bit about this opportunity of biosolar. I know we all love the idea of introducing solar panel on the building, but it's been interesting to understand what they have achieved in this project in the CBD of Sydney, where by combining green roof and solar panel, the performance of solar panel actually have increased, and at the same time, they creating a system where they can harvest stormwater, improving the biodiversity of the area. And so there's this kind of a combo of mixing two systems into one, which can easily also be adopted in retail spaces. One that there's a lot of talking at the moment, and I haven't seen yet a retail space where it's been adopted, but we've done a few office building. It's the introduction of CLT, cross-laminated structure, and again, that's set kind of the tone where right from the beginning we should start designing structures and that carefully consider the sustainability of our material within our projects. And then an interesting one as well, when we're talking about repurpose, reuse of building, there is an enormous amount of shopping mall that are unfortunately finding the end of their life, especially in the States, but some of them get reinvented into residential, into hospital, but at the same time, there is building that they were not born for retail, and they're actually becoming an interesting opportunity to new retail center, living center. And this is an interesting example in downtown Houston, which was designed by the Dutch company or firm OMA, where they needed not only to respond to the need of a retail center, but in this particular area of Houston, there was a lack of public spaces. There was no piazza, there was no park. And so they actually embraced this idea of reinventing the entire rooftop with this kind of public park, which be transformed at night as an event space. During the morning is a yoga kind of area and outdoor gym. And again, it was a building that was abandoned for over 30 years, and now obviously have found new life. And just to close, this is also kind of one of my last kind of project again, where we very similar. We have endorsed, embraced a very aspirational opportunity of creating a new, as I say, kind of a green roof over an existing shopping mall, and introducing not only the green roof, but new building with different uses. But this is really a space that we see is going to be activated not only by the customer or the public that want to engage with the retail space. It's going to become a destination for the wider really community and the neighborhood that really lives around this area. And I think that's what I see essential to shopping center to embrace and understand that they are more than just retail. They become the heart of spaces that are dedicated to people, and they have in a way, the social responsibility to really respond to the human needs. I think, Malush, with that, thank you, and I'll pass back to you.
Thanks, Aram. Yeah, love all they're all such valid points, and really hope to see some of our malls changing into and adopting some of those nice design elements to make them nicer spaces. Yeah,
I guess probably one thing I hope that now most of you, if not all of you, understand why it's a redemption story. I'm taking my hat off to Victor when he started really of thinking more as something that was more than just retail. And unfortunately, he's passed away many years ago. But it's interesting to see how that initial idea, which kind of was lost for some time, is coming back, and is coming back in a strong way.
Yeah, and also how contextual elements determine how some of these things would make them fall away, like the safety and security in South Africa, how that has impacted a lot of these ideas of interconnectivity into the surrounding spaces and opening up malls instead of like making this closed box. Yeah,
well, like for instance, to your point, and I know obviously very well the South African context and the challenge that we have there. But the idea of green roof, for instance, or if it's not a green roof, even if it's just an activator roof, it's a probably one of the easier and nicer ways to take advantage of often the existing space that are just underutilized. Maybe I shouldn't name, but there's a lot of shopping mall that I can think about, across different provinces in South Africa. They're sitting there with absolutely an available new ground floor. So which makes by default also safer when you are, 4 or 5 story above ground, and so you can play with the logistic and the challenges that we have, or you have at the moment in South Africa.
Absolutely. I'm going to hand over to you, Brian, and then after Brian's presentation, we'll definitely dive in some of the comments and further discussions. So Brian is going to look at it from a more operational point of view. So also get going.
Thanks, Malush. And I believe it was your birthday yesterday, so wishing you a happy birthday for yesterday. Big shout out.
Another year older. Can't escape it.
There's some great spaces there that Aram has showed that I would certainly want to hang out in. Some nice green treed areas and people-centric, I think, and we have missed that in a lot of building design in the past, and hopefully we can start sorting that out. Just to get started, I think the portfolio that I'm involved with is Liberty 2 Degrees. It's now business units of Standard Bank. And very, very briefly, just a context around that, we are a smaller portfolio in terms of the number of buildings that we have, but we have high value buildings. So we've got the likes of Sandton City and the adjacent Nelson Mandela Square, Eastgate, and a number of other retail buildings. We are very much retail centric. We've sold out of most of the offices that we've had over the past couple of years. So my perspective is really around larger format retail. And why I give that context is because every portfolio will have different challenges. So the way that I'll be presenting is based on my experiences in our portfolio. And I don't say that we've got all the solutions for everyone. So the cornerstones of what we're looking at from an environmental sustainability perspective for the portfolios around Green Star ratings, net zero aspirations for waste, water and carbon, and biodiversity. So the biodiversity is a newer element, and we are still catching up a little bit around that, but we've done quite well in some of the other areas, and I'll go into a little bit of detail around what we've managed to achieve. But I think the takeaway is that there's no silver bullet that will solve everything. It's really a matter of chipping away at each of these issues and trying to get to an end goal that you're trying to achieve, and doing all the right things and researching and educating yourself and trying to look at realistic targets. So our portfolio, I've mentioned there some of the other buildings. We've also got Botshabelo in Free State, which is about 50 kilometers from Bloemfontein, as well as Liberty Promenade Mall in Mitchells Plain in Cape Town. So the Green Building Green Star ratings, as a member of Green Building Council of South Africa, I think we're closely aligned in terms of the payoff line of inspiring a built environment where people and planet thrive. And we were able to achieve Green Star ratings on our entire portfolio in 2021. And we are busy recertifying the portfolio at the moment. We've got submissions in on most of our portfolio, and we've just got Sandton City and Nelson Mandela Square to go for recertification. And the idea is that it needs to be recertified every 3 years so that what you're doing is current and relevant. You can't just do a once-off certification and then be done with it. There's an honesty check in place to make sure that you continue doing what you started doing, and hopefully even do better than what you may have done before. So the Green Building rating criteria, in terms of Green Star ratings, there's a number of broad categories of criteria. First one touch on is around management practices. So it's having a plan, a clear plan around what you're trying to achieve. You're certainly not going to get Green Star ratings by winging it. So the first key point is around management. Then the two big ones, as everyone would expect, energy and water usage, and those rank very, very highly. So the percentage of points that are allocated to those criteria as a percentage of the total is very high, which I think is right. Operational waste disposal, and then some of maybe the lesser known ones or the less intuitive ones, something like indoor air quality. Now, indoor air quality, I know from our perspective, it's something we've always looked at and addressed, but during the COVID time, something like indoor air quality became incredibly important. So everyone wanted to know, do they have access to windows? When were the aircons last serviced? How often were the filters replaced, etc., etc.? And a lot of these items are around occupant wellness and well-being. So things like natural lighting, and I saw some amazing designs there from Aram's projects that he's working on, and you feel it as a person when you're going into a dark building compared to a nice light building, lots of skylights, lots of natural light coming through. What makes a pleasant environment for visitors and for tenants and occupants. Procurement practices, sustainably sourcing locally made products is also getting a lot of attention, which is fantastic. Land use and ecology, which I'll touch on a little bit later. green cleaning, innovative practices, doing things new, trying new things. And I think one of the great things about our industry is that we share a lot of ideas with each other. And that happens quite regularly. The landlords are incredibly competitive with each other in certain ways, and in other ways, like sustainability, we're happy to share ideas and share successes, and also share things that we've tried that haven't worked so well. And that's also important, is not everything you're going to try does work, and that's okay. You need to just keep trying and keep innovating. And then access to public transport and the role of all sorts of public transport, such as minibus, taxis, buses, in Sandson's case, Gautrain. So we've got some good facilities here at this precinct. Going on to net zero waste. So our net zero waste, we certified fairly recently over the past couple of months. And maybe just the takeaway from this was that over a 3-year period, we were able to move from a diversion rate from landfill of under 40% to over 90% with very clear strategies in place and a very clear goal of how we needed to get to that point. Why we want to be part of this journey, if we look at the sub-Saharan African graph, we are, in terms of these continental breakdowns, we're currently 6th out of the 7. Within the next 30 years, 25 years, we're going to be the 3rd biggest contributor. And the alarming thing is that it's the fastest rate of change of waste generation out of all of these continental breakdowns, which is shocking and appalling. And we need to be part of the solution as to try and stop that trend in the ways that we can. Our waste journey, we really start, and you'll see this as a theme throughout waste, water, and energy, with trying to determine where we are. And everyone will have that same journey. You need to determine what your baseline is. A key component of our waste journey was around understanding the waste that was coming out of our retail facilities, and then being able to determine how we could better manage that waste. That was an absolutely critical part of the process. And then just in terms of this graph, it doesn't seem like much happened in 2020 and 2021, the COVID years. There was a lot of survival happening, but there were some other things happening with regards to waste. Then we really got going again in 2022, tenant engagement. And I'll go into a little bit more detail around that just now. And then a number of other interventions and variable waste billing, which is covered under tenant engagement as well. So it's really around recycling. There's massive opportunity in South Africa to recycle waste. Everything from tin, glass, cans, plastics. There's a lot that can be done. And we need to just keep trying to drive those recycling rates as high as possible. The other massive adjustment that we've been able to make in terms of that diversion ratio is around organic wastes. We've got big food and restaurant and beverage occupants in our facilities, and they're big generators of waste. And if those are given to us and our waste management company to utilize in an effective way, and not just given to us dumped with a whole lot of other nasties, we can convert that into organics, and that composting facilities, both on-site and off-site, have been able to assist us with those ratios. So those are just a couple of items on this slide. Then 2 key relationships that I'd like to touch on that were really critical in getting us to the net zero place. The one is the landlord waste management company, the traditional model of having a lot of manpower and charging a premium on manpower, as well as gate fees to go and dump waste, was completely wrong in our opinion. It does still happen, but we needed somebody or company to align with our targets of net zero waste, and that required a different way of thinking, and that is down to performance targets to achieve net zero waste, and also financial reward. So our company that we partner with is aligned financially in terms of diversion rates and recycling, and getting benefits from what is recycled, and passing that on to part of that onto us, and indeed passing that onto some of our tenants as well, or part of it onto our tenants. Second key relationship is with our tenants themselves. So we used to get a lot of waste, contaminated waste in these huge big wheelie bins, and it was very difficult to recycle a lot of what came through to us. We've changed a number of practices, which we now get waste coming through to us in a much more manageable format, which is able to drive those diversion rates up and the recyclability rates up hugely. One of the key factors to this was around the way that waste was charged or recovered from tenants previously. It's typically recovered on a square meter basis, which is just kind of nonsensical. So as an example, if you've got a 500 square meter restaurant, one tenant could be generating a turnover of R1 million out of that space, and another tenant could be generating a turnover of 5 million out of that space. And as a proxy, based on those turnovers, the one generating 5 million would probably be generating 5 times more waste. So we are now charging or recovering from tenants on a much more fair basis of what waste and the volumes and the types of waste that they are putting into the waste streams. And for tenants that cooperate with us, there is a reward system. And for tenants that don't cooperate with us, there has to be a punitive system. If they're giving us 20 wheelie bins a day with mixed waste that we find very difficult to recycle, we have to sort of change that behavior. But it very seldom happens that we have to do that punitive tariff. Tenants are actually, after some training, very happy to come along for the journey and be part of the successes of our retail facilities, which has been great. Then I'll just jump across to net zero water. Net zero water journey, exactly the same starting point: baselining, determining accurate readings of where we're at. And the next part of that was smart metering, which also assists with leak detection. So as I said earlier on, there's a lot of different factors that you need to do, I think, to get to a point where you are making a difference. And one of those is understanding leaks. Leaks in a residential facility is bad enough, but in a big facility like this, where you've got significant amounts of water coming in and potentially significant amounts of water going out in an unwanted way, in an unused way, can be quite catastrophic to your sustainability initiatives. A lot of other things are what we've got there is no cost and low cost interventions, and that's just really running your facility as efficiently as possible. Just things as an example, it was as occupants of shopping centers, we get quite spoiled. We walk into a nice air-conditioned building, and it's nice and cool, and it's 32 degrees outside in summer in Johannesburg, and we walk into a nice, cool air-con building. And sometimes we've sort of pushed the boundaries a little bit in terms of what those tolerance levels are. So maybe increasing the temperature by 1 degree, and really establishing if there's any difference to a shopper or occupants of the mall whatsoever, and trying to do those smart kind of behavioral changes without detracting from the shopper experience. So optimization of consumption, it really boils down to reducing potable water use, and as an end goal, metering and control we've spoken about a little bit. We are in the process of changing our air conditioning systems from water-cooled to air-cooled systems, so a typo there. And we are probably likely to see between 15 and 20% water reduction across our portfolio as a result of those changes in systems. Now, as you'll all know, those systems are incredibly expensive, so we've had to wait towards the end of life of those systems before we've done that, and it's working out really nicely that it's opportune in line with our water targets. And then some of the basic ones, really easy ones: low flow taps, waterless urinals, that can be done at most facilities. They don't always go perfectly. Something like waterless urinals, if they're not managed properly, can have quite a bad stench to them. So, these types of things you learn at certain facilities. They work really well. At some facilities, they don't work as well. We need to train our cleaning staff on how to change the filters, etc. So there's ways of doing these things, but we're learning all the time in terms of what works in different facilities. And then water supply is the key one. So we've got a number of examples of what we've done and what we are busy investigating. Rainwater harvesting facilities are relatively good and a relatively quick win, but they are obviously very seasonal dependent. So they are not a very reliable source all year round. They typically get a lot of water very quickly in the rainy seasons, and then months of season where we don't have water supply from the rainwater harvesting systems. But they work fairly well on most of our facilities. Then the two that we're busy investigating at the moment is grey water systems, and whether that would be done with a dual plumbing system or other means. But there's good opportunity in terms of grey water systems and using that grey water in ablution facilities. In most of our retail facilities, we've got high usage in ablution facilities, and so it's a good opportunity. Blackwater harvesting systems are a lot trickier. You need licensing, and that licensing does come with a lot of complexity. And there is some pushback from some of the municipalities. It's a revenue source that'll be lost to them. So there are some concerns around getting the necessary licenses, but it is something that we're busy investigating seriously at the moment. And then, just in terms of borehole usage, and I've put a caveat there that it's not a sustainable source, but it is an alternative supply. So I think, something like we look back at Cape Town, the looming day zero in 2018, I think it was, people were really scrambling to see how they could better use their water, and boreholes were an option, particularly at that stage. And most recently, an example at Sandton City at the end of November, beginning of December, we had a 5-day outage here, and we would have loved to have had more effective boreholes, because running a centre this size without a water supply became very, very difficult. So we trucked in water at that stage as an alternative, but it really is difficult. So water, business continuity is a big issue, and I think all of us are concerned about water as a concern for business and for residential, and throughout the country in terms of infrastructure that is decaying, etc. So it is something that is an option that we will explore. Then the poster child, I'd call it, of sustainability, which is solar. Always looks good in a photograph and is incredibly effective. I think the returns that we're getting on solar projects are really, really good. I remember looking at solar projects 10 years ago, 11 years ago, and the returns were really, really poor. They were not something I would have taken to a financial director. And now every solar project that we've done has actually exceeded our modeled performance, and we're doing a rollout at quite a big scale. So the energy journey started out similar to the other two, baselining and doing an inventory and getting very, very clear readings of what we were consuming throughout our portfolio. Again, smart metering being implemented to make readings in that a lot better, and then going into no cost and low cost interventions, and then again looking at more expensive capital projects. So just by way of example, I think in this slide we talk about 20% of our total energy demand being met by on-site renewables. I think on the next slide I've put it down to about 17%, but it's fairly significant. I think that's the point, is that the solar is a very, very good way for many, many landlords to make a significant difference. So I've touched on some of these issues already. I think there's some other items, operational items that can be used very effectively: motion detection, lighting, working with the tenants. I think the other key takeout from this slide is that the landlord is accountable for about 30% of total energy usage in a building. The tenants are responsible for the other 70. So it's no good us as landlords doing as much as we possibly can and not working very, very closely with the tenants to see what they can be doing in their facilities as well. So we've got currently 7 megawatts of solar that has been installed across our portfolio. We are in the process of adding another 10 megawatts, which will be completed by early 2025. And that'll take us 17% of the way off our grid supplied energy, or total energy usage. And then the 2 other exciting opportunities that we've been looking at, one is wheeling. And very briefly, I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with the concept of wheeling, but wheeling is buying clean energy. It's energy that's generated through renewables, generally as a combination of wind, solar primarily, and also through water sources. So, and then you're buying technically that clean energy from, it's still got to be transported on the Eskom grid lines, but you're technically buying that clean energy. And then battery supplies, which are a good opportunity. They're particularly good with load shedding. Thankfully now we haven't had load shedding for quite some time, but there is also arbitrage opportunity of getting batteries and then buying your energy from either Eskom or the municipality when it's cheaper during the day at off-peak times, and then topping it up and then utilizing your battery supplies at that stage. So our solar, just by way of example, in terms of what we've been reporting, we see the growth there starting from 2020 ramping up in terms of what we've been producing, and it starts to become really meaningful money. So the systems themselves are naturally quite expensive, but our savings for last year were 12 million rand. So when just by way of a crude calculation, if we look at ramping that up from our 7 megs up to 17 megs, we're going to be at 25 to 30 million rand savings as a result of what we've done on solar per annum. It becomes a very, very viable option financially as well. Then lastly, I'm just going to touch on biodiversity. I mentioned briefly, it's one of our newer areas of focus that we've been working on. And we've got these big concrete structures, let's call them what they are, in terms of big retail facilities. There's obviously a lot of embedded carbon, etc., in there. And it's really to try and look at what we can do as much as we can with the facilities that we've got. I think everyone has to comply with environmental impact assessments on new builds, etc. But it's really at looking at what you can do responsibly on existing facilities. And a couple of those examples is really trying to look at an indigenous vegetation, etc., and taking out invasive species that use a lot of water, green cleaning materials so that we're not damaging our surroundings, pest management methods instead of extremely harmful poisons, etc., and water management and the connections to nature. And I think that's probably a good closing point for me with Aram's presentation is that humanness of what we're trying to achieve through sustainability. And yeah, you just look at the facilities on Aram's presentation there in terms of what a great facility you can create with adding greenery and adding beautiful elements to these spaces that we've got for retail. So there's the very functional components of retail, the waste management areas, etc., truck tunnels and that. And then there's these opportunities to beautify and to have inviting areas that people really want to come and either hang out in or shop in or dine in, etc. That I think we've missed a lot of opportunities in the past, and it's amazing to see the work that Aram and his team are doing, and we'd like to see a lot of that throughout South Africa.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Well done.
Thank you.
It was a really nice overview of all the initiatives that you guys have been implementing over the years. I've got one question in the chat from Tabby. And this one is probably for Brian. What are the best practices for maintaining solar panels in a densely packed solar energy system to ensure optimal performance and longevity?
That's probably way more technical than I can answer. You mentioned in my bio, I'm from a finance background, so I'm happy to share my email address, and I can pick that up with our technical guys. But yeah, unfortunately, I won't be able to answer that one offhand, Molly.
That's fine. And maybe that's also something to link back to the biosolar. And I think I was going to ask Aram to explain that concept a little bit more, because I think there's very few people in South Africa that understand that concept, or have heard of that concept in a space.
I can do two things. I can explain it in very simple terms what I've managed to experience. Also because that particular site that I was showing a presentation is not far from my office. But also, what I might do, Malush, I sent you actually, I have one or two very interesting link where the results and the post results, because the project's been completed already for some time, have been captured and demonstrate actually the effectiveness of that system. And in essence, really, it's relatively simple. In an urban environment like the CBD of Sydney, but that is applicable to many other cities. You already need to try to mitigate your what is called the heat island effect. Doing that, it's often achieved by introducing what we call green roof, and by also including solar panel. They realize, or they demonstrate that actually the performance of solar panel can increase between 3 to 5%. And really it's because solar panel, we think that what they want is solar as much as possible. Reality is that when they reach a certain temperature, they actually start underperforming, and they start actually not giving back what they designed for. I can't actually recall exactly what temperature, but if I remember correctly, something about when they exceeded the 28 or 30 degree, it really start be detrimental to the performance of the solar panel. So what the greenery does is actually helping to maintain a more constant and cooling down the roof area. And so that has a beneficial impact on the solar panel. But subsequently as well, it helps to cooling down the building below, so obviously that has a positive knock-on effect in reducing energy consumption, reducing the need of utilizing mechanical system. And as I mentioned earlier, what was interesting, and I don't think it was necessarily as expected initially, just the biodiversity has completely changed. All of a sudden you have birds, insects, and other than living creature coming back to the city. And that links back again to the biophilic impact that this has on the well-being of people. So it's really an interesting chain of positive knock-on effects, all driven by call it a technological intuition. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Noma, your hand was up. I see that you put the question in the chat.
So yeah, there's not necessarily a direct financial return from getting a Green Star rating. It's like you suggested towards the end there. It's more around savings, particularly on energy and water efficiencies, because there's a lot of factors in the Green Star ratings that have not got a direct financial return. So something like having the management controls and the vision of what you're trying to achieve, etc., is not necessarily going to have a direct financial return. And there's a lot of items of doing good business practices or green business practices, which will actually cost you some money. So something like having sustainable cleaning materials might actually cost a little bit of a premium as opposed to using these harmful detergents, etc. But by the same token, there's also it comes through on the bottom line, and then ultimately in the valuation of the building can also improve the value of the building. So it can be a double whammy when you're doing the right things in a very smart way. But it's difficult to put a direct financial correlation to getting a green star rating.
Thank you. Mike, you want to?
Brian, I promise I won't make it too technical.
Thanks, Mike.
Just in terms of the sort of overall landscape from a data point of view now, obviously a lot of the malls, if one looks at the technology that's available now, they know how many people are in the malls, they know where the people are moving in the malls. Is that implemented very heavily locally? And what are the opportunities from an AI perspective to leverage that data into improving everything from cleaning services to waste management to energy usage, etc.?
The huge opportunity is the short answer. A lot of the technology, if I'm honest, doesn't work as well in practice as it does in theory. Even if I look at our sophisticated foot counting systems, etc., of how many people we've got coming through the malls on a monthly basis, it's not as accurate as one would want it to be, but there is absolutely huge opportunity here. So yeah, I think in terms of things such as a success of an event that you're running in your exhibition courts, and how many extra people you might see as a result of running an event compared to an average Saturday or Sunday, whatever the case might be, all the way through to saying, typically at the end of the month, we get 20% more people on the Saturday than we do the other 3 Saturdays of the month. And based on that, we need an extra cleaner or 2 cleaners or 3 cleaners. There's huge opportunity. And it's something I can't wait to see becoming a reality.
Okay, and then you can obviously extend that into the energy and water consumption and various other things.
Absolutely. I think that's exactly it. I mean, if we can see that there's 3,000 people coming through Sandton City for the first hour of trade, and that ramps up to 10,000 people, and what those settings should be so that we can appropriately set our temperature controls, etc. There's huge opportunity. So I think the building management systems are powerful in that, but there's definitely a lot more opportunity in terms of being able to work a lot smarter still.
Okay, and then just out of interest, on the retail portfolios, have there been any projects that you've looked at that have considered the sort of, particularly on the retrofit from a solar reflective index point of view of roofing materials and the impact that has on energy consumption?
We have investigating it. It's getting a little bit technical for me. I know that our team has done it. We did it at Liberty Promenade in Cape Town. There was a lot of investigative work that went into it, and it in the end we didn't end up going with that product, but there was a lot of work that went into investigating what that would have meant.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Mark.
I'm just gonna shoot. Hi, Brian.
Hi there, Zatso.
I just wanted to ask, in terms of, well, from your opinion, I've been following the Fourways Mall, which
Yes.
has had a bit of a financial trouble. As like a owner of a mall, like, what are the biggest drivers that would cause you to increase rent, and what are the risks that you have to deal with when you're looking at your tenancy? Are they tied to these or sustainable solutions, whether it's efficient lighting, efficient HVAC system, recycled water, and so forth?
Yeah, look, you often have to spend money to make money. I think Fourways has been quite well documented in terms of some of the difficulties that they've had, and I think they do have a good outlook. I think they've brought on some very, very credible partners of late that I think that can do some really great work with them. And yeah, at the end of the day, you want to bring your operating costs down as much as you humanly can, but that often requires spending money to get that money, get your operating costs down, and I don't think that they've necessarily done as much as they can, but I think they do have plans to make some significant changes there.
No, thanks.
Norma?
Hello, Melissa. Hello, Brian and Aram.
Hi there.
This is to Brian. So you mentioned that tenant engagement was quite important for all certifications. Was everything voluntary, or did anything change on tenant lease agreements?
So the green leases has got a number of components to it. So something like the waste management practices, etc., is a relatively easy one. What's a lot more difficult is something like energy benchmarking, because we actually have to do it at a tenant level. So you might have the nature of tenants are very different. So you might have a 50 square meter jewelry store, which has incredible lighting and is quite a big user of energy on a per square meter basis. We can't compare that tenancy against the likes of a 12,000 square meter Checkers. So the green lease components, there's some really, really easy ones, and then there's some more difficult components. And we've brought in a whole lot of elements, and there's some that we're continually tweaking. I think the other key part of that point that you made, though, is also around our tenant criteria document, or a TCD, to make sure that when tenants come into our spaces, that they are doing the responsible thing and using products that we'd like them to use in our environments, and banning certain other products. So we're quite strict in terms of the tenant criteria documents at each and every mall, to try and set the sort of right tone for the relationship from the outset, that the tenants are aware that we try and operate sustainable environments as much as possible.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Aram, there was a comment earlier in the chat around reinventing basements. Have you had any projects where like sort of car parking became obsolete and they had to rethink like what to do with the basement?
Yeah, actually, yes. So it's interesting. The project that I'm currently involved, that I was showing earlier, that Castle Tower, northwest of Sydney. About 3 years ago, they were lucky enough that the state government pretty much parked a new metro station next to them, which brings, people from the city and from some of their neighboring kind of a town. And so a big chunk of parking pretty much got redundant. And what we're looking with the land owner for the mall, I mean, I don't have a solution for the entire amount of parking that they are underutilized now, but in some area we're actually creating kind of underground event spaces. So they partnership with a theater company, which has obviously been interested on the space. They don't require natural light, so obviously there's limited option of which tenant can fit into that type of spaces, but they have a direct access and to the mall. They have a direct access from the street, so they have that kind of a link and frontages and addresses that are required to make it attractive in terms of pedestrian flow. And they were able, to secure 6,500 square meter of space, that was otherwise just kind of abandoned, or you can't convert all the basement in storage. That's normally the first step. But and the reality is, and I'm sure Brian can confirm, is large department store are reducing, if not closing down. So it's definitely in existing assets. Storage room is not what you need. It's finding some of this clever opportunity where you can actually reinvent also basement spaces is interesting.
Yeah. I was also thinking like how you can sort of integrate public spaces into more the mall spaces, so that like if you want to go for a run in the evening when it's dark, when it's not necessarily safe to run on the street, like I would gladly go to the mall, park there and do my run there. If you could go and do that. I saw another building that was on the social media this week where they had like this whole running track in this circular. It looked very nice. And I think in that context, that if you then combine it with some coffee stands or like a restaurant, like afterwards you can do like a quick coffee or something. Like
so if very interesting, if you look, if you take the chance to Google research that shopping mall I was showing you in Bratislava in Slovakia, which is called Nivy, Nivy. I didn't show in my slides, but it's a very interesting project. And the top of the roof, this kind of a public park area, they develop a full running course. I can't remember how long it is, but and people, similarly, when they're finishing work, before catching the bus, they actually go up there, have a few run. There's public amenity and end of trip facility, where you can change and have a shower, and then you carry on your journey back home, which is, I think, again, this is all in a way free of charge. And that's why I say it's a very interesting how mall are becoming just more than retail. It become really potentially the heart of the social life that we all have and we all need.
Yeah, absolutely.
I saw a question, I think, from Luze, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly. So just very quickly in response to that question around waste management.
Oh,
So
yep.
every bin that we collect from a tenant is actually tagged, closed, and once it's opened in the waste facilities, it's actually photographed as evidence of what we've received from that tenant. So if we get a bin full of recyclables, whether it's glass or cardboard or whatever it is, it's all photographic evidence that ties back to the waste billing of that tenant, and that also then is used as part of the rebates that go back to that tenant. So it's actually quite a scientific process where literally the guys in the waste management areas have got iPads and taking photographs. It's quite something.
It's a very sophisticated waste area. I've seen it in Liberty, off in Promenade Mall in Mitchell's Plain. All right, guys. Sorry, Luze, for missing your question, but I think that was the last one, and I'm gonna start wrapping up so that we can close on time. Thanks, Aram, for sharing all the links on the chat box. So just to keep in mind, next month we're talking about regenerative landscaping. So we've got 2 speakers, one project in Johannesburg that completely redid their landscape to endemic landscaping, and we're talking about permaculture. And then in September we might do something around waste and composting. So that is sort of on our calendar for the coming months. Can I have a big round of applause for our 2 speakers, Brian and Aram? It was really amazing to have you guys here and to approach the topic from different angles. And Aram, I know it's like 2 a.m. on your side, so we're super grateful for having you here.
Thanks to you,
Brian,
Malush. And thanks to Brian to
thanks for
enjoy.
Yeah, and sharing the knowledge and all the in the sustainability initiatives that you're implementing in your portfolio. It's really appreciated for that. Yeah, and then again, Syed, for waiving our CPD validation cost again and providing you guys with the CPD certificates. Again, if you know somebody that wants to donate money to us, let us know. We're not asking for big money, just to keep the show running. And again, follow us on our social media. That really helps us. If we have a large following, it strengthens our case to raise and do more good in the industry. And then lastly, I want to say thank you for attending. See a lot of familiar faces, and I hope to see you next month, and have a great evening.
Thanks everyone. Thanks, Malush. Brian, bye-bye.
Thanks, Aram. Good night. Sleep well.